All right, so as mentioned, I'm going to talk about the landmarks today, but I'm the urban planner for historic preservation for the Village of Oak Park, which means I'm the staff liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, and one of my roles is to assist homeowners through the historic review processes. So if you're a landmark or you're in one of the historic districts, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. And here's my email. I'll share it again at the end. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me. But today I'm going to speak specifically about the landmarks, a little bit about what the landmarks are and what it means if your building is a landmark, how you could become a landmark, and then I'm going to do a little focus on our two newest landmark additions. So you saw a little glimpse of this in Susan and Andrew's presentation, but Oak Park has 3 historic districts, and we also have 71 local landmarks, and you can get an idea of where they are in the village on this map. To give a quick overview of the districts, we have the Frank Lloyd Wright Historic District, the Ridgeland Oak Park Historic District, and the Gunderson Historic District. And what is a landmark? This is the official language here, but essentially it's property which has some significance to the village. It tells some important part of our history, and that can be because of a person who lived there. It might be because of the architecture or a cultural factor. So there's a lot of ways that a landmark can be eligible. And to give you a little glimpse of a few of them, and I am going to share kind of a variety of all the pictures in this presentation are landmarks. Of course, we have the Frank Lloyd Wright Home and Studio. Again, of course, the Hemingway House. We also have a lot of diversity of houses. So we have the Benson House here, which is an Italian Renaissance. The Fixman House is a mid-century modern. And they're not even all houses. We have churches, and we have the conservatory, as well as commercial buildings and other building types. So what does it mean to be a landmark? So as mentioned by Tom Abramson, we have historic review of all future projects that would occur on a landmark, and that just means that you go to the Historic Preservation Commission and you have to meet the historic architectural review guidelines. So you can make changes, you can do things like build additions, they just have to be done in a way that is compatible with the historic house and with the historic district if you're in a district, and those are the things that the commission will look for.
Susie, sorry to interrupt, but we're not able to see your slides advance.
Oh, let me see, thank you for letting me know. Let's see if I can move it around. It does say my screen share paused. Okay, can you see now the being a landmark slide?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and I don't know when it stopped, but I might just give you a quick, this was the last slide that had the 6 landmarks that I mentioned. Okay. So again, historic review, financial incentives, straight from Susan and Andrew's presentation right before mine. If you're not in a historic district and you become a landmark, that makes you eligible for those same financial incentives that apply to the houses in the historic district. And also, of course, local recognition and appreciation for that house's contribution to Oak Park's history. And why it's important, this kind of stacks on what I just mentioned, but it increases protection of the historic building. So having to go through that historic process. It tells stories beyond what the historic districts tell. So of course, the Frank Lloyd Wright Historic District tells this very important story of the transition of architecture from before Wright through the Prairie School and what followed. But we have a lot of other stories that we can tell in the village, and having landmarks is an important way we can recognize these stories. And we can recognize and educate about local history. So people might see those plaques when they're walking down the street. They can look them up on the village website and see why that house is a landmark. So if you're interested in nominating a property, what is the process? So the criteria are important. It has to be over 50 years old and it has to possess historic integrity. But an easy way to describe how you might be eligible is just, what unique story does your building tell? This probably is what will make it significant. So to kind of parse that out, a look at significance. These are 3 different Hemingway properties. So we have a lot of Hemingway family associations in the village. And each of these properties have, even though they're all related to the Hemingways, they each have a different unique story. And those are the stories that would make them landmark eligible. And the top 2, both are landmarks. The bottom one is not a landmark. But to begin with, the Hemingway Birthplace, of course, associated with Ernest Hemingway, who was born there. The George Hemingway house is actually the house of Ernest Hemingway's uncle, who was a developer in the area. And then at the bottom, the boyhood home of Hemingway. So each of these tell kind of a unique and significant story. So a look at the process that you would go through if you're nominating. So you prepare a nomination, you would send that to me and I would provide it to the Historic Preservation Commission. The first step would be a preliminary determination by the commission. Then the commission would hold a public hearing. They would provide their recommendation to the village board. And then the village board is the entity that lists historic landmarks within the village code. And to give you a little peek at our newest landmarks, these are both within the last couple of years. The Robbins Chapman House was originally designed in 1890 by Patton and Fisher, and unfortunately we don't have an original photograph. It would be very interesting to see. It was completely redone by Talmadge and Watson in 1910 in the prairie style, and we have this trend in the village where a lot of buildings were sort of prairieized. And this is, this house is unique not only because of its association with architects Talmadge and Watson, but also in helping tell that story of how people made existing buildings into the prairie style. And then the Telford Macarthur house was just listed, I believe this January. And this was a White and Weber house. It's in the Tudor Revival style, built in 1928. And one of the interesting stories that they had here, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but they're on this historic sandbar map you see at the bottom. Their house is in the bottom right corner, and their coach house is on this adjacent lot. It's now one lot, and it is believed to be designed by E.E. Roberts because it was originally associated with their neighbor to the back. So that kind of added a unique story, and they were able to make the landmark apply to the entire lot there. So that kind of wraps up my brief summary, but here is my contact information again, and I would be happy to take questions now, or you can reach out to me by email as well.
Thank you, Susie. Very well done. I love looking at all those beautiful pictures. Are there any specific questions for Susie that we have at the moment? It looks like people will be reaching out to you directly. Oh, wait. Yeah, nothing at the moment. So thank you, Susie.
Yeah, and I do have a couple quick things I can talk some more about if that would be great. So, one of the great things about homeowners in Oak Park is that I get approached a lot by homeowners who are interested in landmarking, which we love to receive landmark nominations from the homeowners, and I'm happy to help in preparing that final statement of significance and kind of finalizing your nomination materials. But we also recently had a question about the landmark plaques, and those are actually provided by the village. So the landmarking process is no cost to the homeowner, it's completely free. And we give you a plaque at the end. And we just had a homeowner who reached out to the plaque company and was able to get house numbers that match their plaques. So they have the same bronze with numbers.
Great. Is there a cost for landmarking? Did you just say that? I'm sorry.
Yes, I just mentioned that, but I'll have you mention again. There's no cost.
There's no cost.
It takes a couple months to go through the process, so patience. But no cost.
All right, very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.